Hey, and welcome to the Joie Miller podcast. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be talking about stop waiting and get moving. What is it that God has called you to do? What is on your heart for this year that you still haven't started moving in? This is a great time of year to really look back and look at our goals, to look at the things that God has spoke to us, maybe during your 21 days of prayer and fasting. Maybe it's that word of the year that you ask God for, and you're not really seeing any movement. And so I want to encourage you today to stop waiting and start moving. There are things that we need to wait on God for, but there are also things that we can start walking in the now. And one of the biggest lies that we buy as Christians is that God is just going to make everything happen. And yes, he does. He's all powerful. I'm not saying that. But what I want you to realize today is there's a part of our responsibility that doesn't fall on God. It falls on us. And I don't want to get to heaven and be like, God, like you spoke all these things to me and I never saw you do any of those things. And him be like, well, you never took any action. You never started walking in what I gave you. So stop waiting for clarity and start moving with what you know in the now. I love Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. I'm going to read it to you. It says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. That when we're trusting in God, we're walking on the path, but we're not leaning on our own understandings as we're walking. We're leaning into him. We're trusting in his way and really understanding that clarity, it's not the starting point. Movement is. So as a believer, a lot of times we think once I see the full picture, then I'll start walking in faith. After I know everything's going to turn out the way I want it to, then I'll start taking action. But that's not the life of faith. The life of faith is, God, you spoke it to me. I'm going to start walking now by faith. And as I start walking, you are going to continue to illuminate the path in front of me. You serve a sovereign God, and he is very involved in your life. And if you are taking the wrong steps, if you're going to make a wrong turn, he will tell you, he will show you which way to go and which way not to go. I think about the illustration of the woman who is sitting at Target, right? And we're sitting there and we're waiting to start our journey home. Well, we could wait all day, but until we hit that drive button, put that gear in drive, we're not going to start having any movement on how to get to where we need to go. And so when we start to drive, what happens, we get illumination of what is right in front of us. It's dark, we can't see, we're sitting at Target, we need to get home. And if we're just waiting, we're never going to get there. It's starting to move in the illumination that the lights provide us in the time. It's one turn at a time, one stoplight to get to where we need to go. And that's how our journey with the Lord is. It's saying, God, I'm going to trust you in this next step with the word that you've given me. Maybe God has given you the first step, but you don't know how the rest of it's going to happen. God first gives you the vision, and then the provision comes alongside of it, whether that's money, whether that's resources, whether that's helpers. And I make that a part of my prayer and my declaration. Father, I thank you that everything that you've called me to, you've also provided for. There's things that I do that I could not do on my own. There are things that are outside of my gifting. And I have to believe that God is bringing divine helpers into my life to see that vision come to pass. But what happens is we get stuck in the things that we don't know. We get stuck in the things that we're not clear on, and then we don't move. God, I could never do a podcast. I don't know how to run the cameras. Well, God didn't call you to figure all that out. He called you to start to maybe study and identify what that podcast was going to be about. And then as you start to believe him for it, he will bring everything else into your life that you need. And so remembering, clarity isn't the starting point. It's not like once I am completely clear, then I will start moving. Movement is the starting point from a word or from an impression that God has put on you to start walking in the way that he has given us to follow. And so understanding that is so important because God gives us direction. He doesn't give us the full game plan. He gives us the next step, but he doesn't give us the full explanation of how things are going to unfold in the situation. And so if you're waiting for that, you will be continuing to wait when God is actually calling us to start moving. Go, follow, build, step out in faith. Stop waiting for everything to be in perfect alignment in the sense of knowing how everything is going to turn out. So a lot of people aren't lacking the direction, but they're actually stuck in the overthinking. This is such a good point because I believe this. Deep inside every person, they know what they should be doing. They know what they should be doing. I love to coach people. I love to counsel people. But at the end of the day, they know. It's not a knowing problem. It's a doing problem. It's an application issue, whether that's maybe they're stuck in an area and they want to grow in their relationship with God. They know what to do, right? Pray, read your Bible. So it's not the knowing, it's the application. It's the discipline issue. Maybe someone is stuck because, they want to lose weight. And we all want some magic formula to lose weight. And it's the basics: exercise, eat healthy, take care of your body, get rest. And so people know, they just don't do. And so that's how it is a lot of times with us in the plan that God has for us, or the movement towards the promise that God has for us, is that we don't get stuck in the knowing. We get stuck in the doing. We're overthinking things. It's called the paralysis of analysis. If you're not careful, you can paralyze yourself from walking and taking faith steps by thinking about all the things that need to happen, all the things that need to align, all the things that need to come in order before you can start moving. I mean, even thinking about my day as a mom, if I would list down everything that I do during the day, I would be so paralyzed by being overwhelmed of everything that has to come together in even one day. But what do? You start moving in what you know that to do that day. You just start functioning in it. Faith functions in movement. Faith functions in movement. I often say it like this: your faith is motion activated. And so if you are in the paralysis of analysis and you're just overthinking, it's going to sabotage you from getting any movement, any steps forward, from starting in what God has called you to do this year. So don't analyze everything. Don't replay decisions. Don't ask too many people for opinions. Let me just say that one more time. Don't ask too many people for opinions. Get one or two people that you trust, that can pray with you, can get wisdom from. But when God called you to something, it wasn't a conference call. Everyone will have a different opinion of what you should do. And, the opinions are many and they oftentimes stink. So, just know what God has called you to do and start walking in the revelation of what that is. And so understanding that you already know more than you think you know. And so it's taking time in prayer and saying, God, what is it that you have already instructed me to do? What is that frustration that I have every night when I go to sleep, knowing that I didn't move in what you've called me to do in this area of my life? And then what are the roadblocks? What are the things that I'm putting mental barriers up that you didn't say was a barrier, that I'm creating barriers? Maybe I don't have enough money. I don't have the right people. I don't have the timing right. Stop putting these mental barriers up and say, God, how can I start moving forward in some way? The Bible says this, that the Lord rejoices when the work begins in your life, not when the work ends. He rejoices when it starts, because that means you have faith enough to grab a hold of the instruction he's given you and to start moving forward in it. Change doesn't happen by accident. Change happens intentionally when we know what we should be doing and we start making steps towards that. And with that, the grace of God comes. Trust in the Lord, and he will direct your path. Part of that direction is the grace of God released upon your life, that when you start moving, there is peace. When you start moving, there is provision. When you start moving, there's just a grace to do what he's called you to do in the lane that he's called you to run in. And so stop making excuses and start moving in what God has asked you to act on. Well, I hope you're enjoying today's podcast. If you love all of the content on these podcast episodes, I want to encourage you to join our newsletter. Get out your phone, get out your computer, and sign up today at joiemiller.co. You have a newsletter that will be delivered to your inbox every other week with encouragement, up-to-date blogs, new podcasts, and new products that we have to help you walk in every area that God has called you to walk in. Check it out today, joiemiller.co. Sign up for the newsletter, and I'll see you in your inbox. Think about that. What's the last thing God asked you to act on? What's the last instruction that He gave you? What is it? Have you made any movement in that area? Start moving in it today. So let's talk about this for a second. How can we start moving in what God has asked us to do? How can we stop overthinking, stop getting stuck, and start creating movement? One is reduce the noise around us. Get super focused on the word that God gave you, the instruction He gave you, what's in your heart. You might say, I don't hear from God. Well, what's in your heart? What's in your spirit? What is that passion that He has given you for this year that you would say, this is going to make this year the best year ever if I would see this come to pass in my life? What is that? Reduce the noise around you and take time to really focus and have some intentional thinking space with God, not overthinking, but intentional thinking space with God. Because when you learn to put your mind in the faith mode rather than the fear mode, what happens is your brain starts to go to work to say, okay, how can we create movement in this area? If you're in fear mode, all those roadblocks, all those reasons that you can't are going to manifest. But if you get yourself in a faith mode, all of a sudden your brain's going to be coming up with ideas and you're going to have fresh faith to start taking action. So have some thinking time. Reduce the noise so you can actually think about what God has called you to do. Set a decision deadline, right? Set a decision deadline. Don't come prey to being indecisive. People who are walking in faith are decisive people. It's not, learn to be decisive. Like, just start practicing decisiveness in your life. I did this years ago, and then I went through a season where I was like, oh my gosh, like I am like uncharacteristically indecisive. One of the things that I really learned to operate in was just making clear decisions. And all of a sudden I was like, I don't know, I feel uneasy. I feel indecisive in this moment. And so, of course, I put it into chat, right? Like we all do. And I'm like, why do I feel indecisive? What's going on with me? And so the chat GPT generated some advice like it always does. And chat said, you need to just get really clear about what God has called you to do in this season. Basically, there was too much noise going on. And so just learn to practice decisiveness. Let your yes be yes, let your no be no, and set a decision deadline. Just be like, you know what, by this day, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to be moving forward in what God has called me to do. I'm going to start the Bible study. I'm going to, by this date, I'm going to homeschool. I'm going to make a decision to homeschool my kids. I'm going to get the curriculum. I'm going to get some sort of movement going in what I know God has called me to do. So, and then just practice decisiveness in your everyday decisions. When your husband says, what do you want to eat for dinner? Tell him what you want to eat for dinner. If your friend says, where do you want to go for coffee? Tell her where you want to go for coffee. Just start practicing decisiveness. All right, accept imperfect movement. If you want to get out of the paralysis of analysis, if you want to get out of waiting mode, just say, I'm not going to wait for everything to be perfect. I'm going to start walking forward in imperfect movement. I say this all the time. Everybody sucks at the beginning, right? Everyone stinks at the beginning. It's not like you start something and you are like perfect at it. No, it takes practice. And so be gracious to yourself. Know that what you're starting as isn't going to be the version of you that is the ultimate version, but you're willing to start. You don't only get better by doing. And so the longer you progress, or the longer you prolong not starting, you're setting off the process of getting better and growing in that which God has called you to do. Let movement teach you. Let it teach you. We just talked about that. Like, let movement teach you. Get better at what God has called you to do. Let it teach you of how to do things relying on God. Let it teach you to grow in faith. Grow in faith for provision. Maybe you want to start a ministry or a nonprofit and you're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know. I don't have the provision for it. Let it teach you to step out in faith. Believe God for those things. And so as you start to do that, you'll start to grow in wisdom and you'll refine that thing that God has called you to do. All right, know this. You might not feel ready, but readiness is not a requirement. Obedience is. You might not feel ready, but ready is not the qualifier. Obedience is. Start saying yes to what God has called you to do. And you don't lose, you learn. You don't lose, you learn. Learn to get better, learn to grow, learn to say yes to God. And you will start to move in the knowledge that you have. And as you do, God will continue to give you increase. He'll open doors. Maybe it's not the clear path that you know that you should be on, but it will lead you to the next right thing in your life. So stop waiting. Stop being paralyzed by overthinking and overanalyzing and start taking movement by faith this week. I want to hear in the comments, what is one area that holds you up, maybe that paralyzes you from moving forward? Let me know in the comments and how you are going to overcome it. Share this podcast with somebody who needs help in these areas of getting moving. And I'll see you next time on the Joie Miller podcast.